about that. So now we'll be moving to our next speaker, Aasma Khan. Aasma is currently serving as the Chief Legal Officer of Gemstone Real Estate Development and has continued her work with Rajhi family in Saudi Arabia. That's about her career, but also we got to know that her philanthropic interests have focused on interfaith dialogue, also early newborn screening in Pakistan, and in helping love and educated children globally. So please, everyone, welcome me to to welcome our next speaker.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I know everyone has lots of things to do, and a Saturday evening is very busy. And I wanted to take this opportunity to share with you, my personal story of adoption and adopting 2 children from Pakistan. And I know that it's a challenging idea when you think of the concept of adoption, because I myself, when I first started thinking about it, was actually when I was 18, and I used to imagine what my life would be like, and it always included in it, and I would like to adopt children. And so the thing is, the journey for me was quite complicated, because as a single person adopting, which is my personal circumstances, there are a lot of countries that shut you out if you're not married. So if you are single, it's a different pathway and a different journey than if you are married. So there are I'm speaking about international general norms as opposed to anything specific to a specific country. Also, because we're all coming from different backgrounds in different countries, I wasn't really sure how to tailor this discussion so that it would be useful and informative in a way that would make the path to adoption seem easier to you. One of the things that is for different countries is there's also age restrictions. So there are age ceilings by which you must complete your application or adoption process in different countries. China, Korea, and Eastern European countries have age restrictions on adoption. The African countries and the Asian countries tend to be more lenient about the age, but they look to issues of like health and wellness and financial circumstances before they're willing to part with a child. In my own personal circumstances, because of myself being single, I actually went through this huge exploratory process of like looking at different countries to see where could I possibly achieve my goal. So I looked at Congo, Uganda, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan. And everybody used to say to me, well, why aren't you considering Pakistan? Because that's my country of origin. And the reason why I wasn't considering Pakistan is because for many, many, many years, whenever I would inquire, they said we only allow married couples to adopt. And the same thing was true of Morocco, where they also allow, and our adoptions are common, is that it's only married couples that were allowed to adopt. Only recently did that rule change in Pakistan, where now single women can adopt. And the infrastructure in Pakistan in particular is starting to change now to accommodate this new phenomena that they are experiencing, which is single women of means are coming from different countries and they are coming to adopt children from Pakistan. So I am not even the first. I am maybe part of the tip of the wave, but there's a larger group of women who are coming after me who are finding it easier now that the path is, there's at least footprints on the sand that people can follow, as opposed to before where there were no footprints. And for most of the people who are from the UK and the US, which is a very, very structured process, the first step is to do your home study. And even if you are living here in the UAE, you can get your home study done here. And you have to contact, however, and be sponsored by a primary care provider and an adoption agency from your home country that specializes in the country that you want to adopt from. So there has to be and the thing is, many adoption agencies, they actually specialize in countries because there's so many nuances and so many different little threads of information that are relevant to your particular goal or your particular desire or country, so it changes. I mean, I had just about 100% nailed down the process in Kazakhstan, and I was just getting ready to organize like my ground support and a translator and everything to travel to Kazakhstan. And they announced that they were becoming a Hague Adoption Convention country, and that changes the whole process of adoption, and it adds 2 years. So they cannot do any international adoptions for 2 years while they're converting from freewheeling, anybody can come and we'll just evaluate you, to we are now a Hague Convention country and we follow and only work with adoption agencies that are Hague Convention certified. So in that process, I got kind of shut out, and they said that it would be 2 years, and then I waited 2 years, and then they still didn't finish. So then I was like, oh my God, I gotta come up with something else. So it was at that time that some of my friends told me, why don't you look at Pakistan again? Because it's your country of origin. You'll find, commonality of facial features or language and roots, and those discussions will be easier than if you're, dealing with a child from Kazakh or from Uganda, where your dialogue is going to be a learning experience for you as well as for the child. So I again revisited the idea of Pakistan, and that's actually when I found out that in particular, Mrs. Eidi in Pakistan had changed her policy, because up until I think even 7 years ago, which was the last time I actually checked, and 3 years ago was when I did my first adoption, Mrs. Eidi was not allowing single women to adopt. However, the first woman who I know who adopted from Mrs. Eidi is from 8 years ago. So, but it was very infrequent, and I think it was one of those things where she looks at your personal circumstances and she evaluates. And because it was not a policy of Eidi at the time, I think those were all one-off experiences of the exceptions to the rule. And then 3 years ago, I'm giving you a little bit of Pakistan history in this little dialogue that I'm having, but 3 years ago, this really amazing young lady was a single woman adopting in Karachi, Pakistan. And she discovered that one of the reasons why single women can't adopt is because you have to have a man on the birth certificate of the child. And the failure to have a man is the reason why single women cannot actually adopt. It's not because there's any other real restriction, because there's no restriction in law, there's no restriction in Islam, and there are no other real, so it was actually just a mechanical issue. So she filed a lawsuit and she fought for 3 years, and she won the court case in the High Court of Pakistan. And it is actually because of her, I'm getting chills right now, it's actually because of her that people like me were successful. And I actually had the opportunity, because one of the things that I was so lucky was that my high school friend's younger brother was friends with her. So so he actually WhatsApp introduced us, and she was my angel guide through my Pakistan process, who actually knew what was going on or how to argue with people. She shared with me her daughter's birth certificate, her daughter's passport copy, so that I could walk around saying, this has been done before. And this lady, she won a court case. So you can't stand in my way, because otherwise you're going to have another one, and I'm a lawyer. So it was, for me, the first one was a huge battleground. And the second one was a statistical anomaly, in the sense that Mrs. Eidi doesn't really allow people to have 2 kids, because there's so many people who are wanting to have children, and there are now so many applicants from the US and the UK, and there's long lines. So actually, when I adopted Rayan, 5 months after I had Rayan, I was 100% convinced that his sibling had to be on the way. And part of that is because before I even had Rayan, I did Umrah. And in my Umrah, in my Tawaf, I'm going to get emotional, I actually prayed for 2 children. So when I actually got Rayan, it was like a sign from Allah that Noor was coming. So I actually, when I was leaving Pakistan, I applied to Mrs. Eidi. And she actually refused me. She said, we don't allow anyone to try and adopt within 2 years of the first adoption, and your baby is only 5 months old. Go home and enjoy your baby. And I said, no, but you don't understand. I'm meant to have another child. And she said, no, no, no. After 2 years, make your application. So then I went back in and I talked to her assistant. I said, listen, I'm telling you, I'm meant to have a second baby. And I have to apply now because I have this really long lead time because I have this very stressful job and I have to plan everything well in advance. So even if you guys are going to give me an approval when Rayan turns 2, I need you to accept my application now. Like I'm standing there with application in hand, photograph, everything all lined up. So she looks at me and she says, this is not how we do things. I said, I know. But you already made me an exception. Let me be an exception again. And so she said, you know what? We'll take your application and we will hold on to it, but it is not approved. It's like she was being very clear with me. So, and then part of the ED process is you have to keep calling them because they have to see your commitment and they have to see that you're really engaged with them and that you're willing to face any hurdles. They hang up on you, they don't talk to you, they're rude to you, but they're just trying to see how much do you want it? Are you willing to put up with whatever it takes? Because you're also going to have to put up with whatever you get. So it's their way of gauging your emotional resilience in the face of their, I don't care. There's, so many people lined up who want children. Do you want this bad enough? And part of their testing process is to see your perseverance and your commitment. So one of the things that Aasma, Mrs. Edi's assistant's name is also Aasma. So one of the things Aasma told me was she said, don't call us because part of the process is the calling. She goes, you cannot call us for 6 months. So I was like, okay, how do I stay on their radar without letting them know that I'm calling them to stay on the radar? So I would call to ask how Mrs. Edi's health was, and I would call for Eid Mubarak. I would call to let them know that Rayan sat up straight. I would call to tell them that, he had his first food. So I used to come up with reasons to call them, and I would tell them things about Rayan, or I would send pictures, and then I would call to check that they got the courier. And so they just got used to chatting with me with essentially what was purposeless chat from their perspective because they only answer the phone to answer adoption calls. And I would always be like, oh, assalamu alaikum, I'm just wondering, did you get my courier? I sent you pictures of Rayan because you're supposed to every 3 months send pictures so that they stay up to date on the child's progress. And Mrs. Edi actually keeps albums of the children. It's really amazing. And she thinks of every child as her child. And I'm telling you, Mr. and Mrs. Edi are two of the most amazing human beings that this earth has had the pleasure of having walk upon it. I've got 5 minutes and I have no idea if you guys have any questions because I've just been flowing. So if anyone has questions, please feel free, raise your hand, just ask because I'm an open book for this. I think this was the best decision of my life. I would never, ever, ever think that for any reason I would want to reverse or do something different because Rayan is his own gem and Noor is her own gem, and I'm so lucky. I got a boy and I got a girl, and when I got the call for Noor, I'd been waiting 6 weeks in country, and Mrs. Edi's getting less and less babies, which is a whole nother dialogue and another story about child trafficking. But one of the things that is happening is she's getting less babies, so the wait time in country is getting longer. And because I had taken by the way, I didn't take a leave of absence. I was working from site, out of location. So while I was working there, my boss called me and he said, listen, in order for you to complete the process end to end, I gave you X many months. You've already used 6 weeks. You're running out of time. So if you don't get a baby in the next couple of days, I think you need to think about coming back. So I had actually called Mrs. Edi's staff and I told them, I said, my office is now saying that, I won't be able to complete the process fast enough because my in-country wait time is becoming too long. And in three to 5 days, I have to fly back. So I was right on the end of my wait period. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, no, when I did Tawaf, I asked for 2. I said, Allah, I want 2. I was not specific boy, girl, or anything like that, but 2 was very, very clear. I have 1. So I was just I was really like, I was honestly devastated because I was thinking to myself, I was like, no, but my dua was for two. But then I was like, you don't know what Allah answers and what He doesn't answer. And, if it's in this dunya, is it in my akhirah? Like, where is this second baby floating around that's mine? And like literally as I was packing my bags to come back to Dubai, I got the call for Noor. And they said, we have a baby. And I said, I'm on my way. And I think one of the things that you can, if you're really interested in doing this, what you need to emotionally prepare yourself for, in the same way that if it was your biological child, don't have expectations of your child. Just get on the road and start walking, because it is honestly the way I ended up with kids, because I just got on the road and started putting one foot in front of the other. And when every door closed, I moved to another country and another country and another country. And then I ended up back in my country of origin, which is really quite funny to me because I literally went around the world looking for a place to adopt. And I was considering all these European and other countries because they didn't have the same marital requirement restriction. And so that's why I was like peering into other cultures and avenues, and I ended up in my home country using my second language, which is horrifically accented Urdu. And alhamdulillah, these are my babies. I didn't actually make a presentation because I didn't want my babies on the internet. So, because I would like them to have the choice someday if they want to or don't want to be a presence on the internet. So I have no Instagram profile. I have no Facebook pictures of my children because I feel like this is their life journey. And while I'm more than willing to share the process and the experience and to encourage everybody, because the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, those who adopt will be like this with me on the Day of Judgment. I can't give you any greater encouragement than that, because I know that a lot of times people start thinking about all the rules about, because I see this on our WhatsApp adoption chat groups a lot, which is, okay, so if I breastfeed my daughter, is my husband now mahram to my daughter, and how many drops of milk versus how many ounces of milk versus, I'm telling you, figure that all out later, find out where you stand, but start your journey. If this is something that's interesting for you, if this is where your path is, start the journey. The rest will all fall into place, because trust me, the information will find you when you need it. And I had that experience every step of this journey. I could tell you 1,000 angels who crossed my path between my tawaf for Umrah and Rayan being put in my hands. And then from Rayan being put in my hands to receiving his Pakistani passport, which was its own ordeal, then coming back to the UAE and waiting 9 months to get his residency visa and thinking that maybe we're gonna have to leave and not be accepted here, and then I don't know what's gonna happen with my job, my life, my everything, and then going for Noor, and then thinking Noor wasn't coming, and then Noor arrived, and 1,000 million ways your life will be blessed like you can't even imagine. And I say that for all parents who have adopted. Leila?
Thank you for sharing that. I know you personally, but I hadn't known all of those parts of the story, and so it was really beautiful to hear it all put together. I have a couple of questions in terms of sort of the legal action side. In terms of here, I remember you did have to wait a while for Rayan to get his iqama. I mean, how did the authorities, was it just because it was bureaucratic and they just take long for things, or did they actually push back because you're single?
Actually, no, it actually had nothing to do with my being single. The issue was that actually when I left to go adopt Rayan, Dubai's requirements were very straightforward. It was basically if you had attested documentation from the home country through which you were, either it's your country of citizenship or the country from which you are receiving the child, if everything is attested in an order, Dubai would stamp the visa. Now, what happened, I don't know, because I was not in the country at the time. I was in Pakistan adopting Rayan. There was some sort of huge scandal here. There was some sort of child trafficking. Something happened here. I don't know. I have absolutely zero knowledge of this. But they changed the requirements, and now there is an Abu Dhabi Human Rights Committee that has to check every case. That adds time to the approval process. And again, married people go through this process faster. I was exceptional because as a woman, they don't presumptively even give your children visas, even if they're your biological children, let alone an adopted child from another country with a different passport. And one of the things that had come up through my process, that was one of the questions that the committee kept asking, which was, if you get deported, where do we send your kids? Because the kids are on a Pakistani passport and you have to send them back to their place of origin. And at that time, I had not yet gotten their US visas to go to the US to complete the adoption process in the US so that we were all on the same passport. So my children are actually here on Pakistani passports and I am on a US passport. So that differential for them was mind-boggling, because they're like, okay, so we have this policy, which is if you screw up, psh, we send you back. What do we do about these two? Because we can't send them back to Karachi because they're minors, and who will receive them, and you're the responsible person, and they can't go with you to the US because guess what, they don't have any US visa. So this was a big hurdle for them in terms of giving me the approval at this stage, because I had not completed the US process. Now, this is something that's idiosyncratic to me, because I actually did the whole process backwards, because Mrs. Zidi gave me a child without any of the US process being sorted, which is something that she never does for Americans. She always makes sure the Americans have their US process sorted, which is what I'm telling you. There were lots of little miracles along the way in my own journey, because having Rayan in my hands was a huge motivator for me to figure everything out. So I actually figured everything out after Rayan. And it took 9 months to get his UAE residency, but with Noor, with Rayan also, I got a 3-month visit visa to come in, and then with Rayan, we ended up overstaying and paying fees. And with Noor, because I was already approved by the Human Rights Committee, Noor's visa was approved within the 3-month period. Like, I think we landed, and 6 weeks later, Noor's visa was issued, because everything that I did was Sharia compliant, because I took guardianship in Pakistan, I took kafala. So as far as they were concerned, everything was Sharia compliant. And financially, I had the capacity. And I told them, I think I wrote a letter saying that if you want to deport me, you can deport me back to Karachi so I can go back with the kids. So that if there was anything that, God forbid, I did that upset the country, then I would go back with my children to Karachi, and then what I do from Karachi is my business. So they were comfortable with that. And again, it was all about being compliant. And the thing is, it is actually a very straightforward process here. It's very straightforward, and I find that very remarkable, and it's encouraging. And I know it's not straightforward, because a lot of the adoption groups here, they're always pondering about how do you manage it all, especially because most people have to go back to their home countries to get the passport confirmed for the child, and then they have to bring the child back. Whereas if you've actually adopted from the United States or from the UK, and the child is already part of your family unit, they just get a visa like all your other children. So it's really very straightforward. Any other questions?
So is it still troublesome to adopt for a single woman?
I think it's still not straightforward, because NADRA, which is the agency that gives the IDs, they still don't have enough officials that are educated in the process. But that's not because they're unwilling to do it. It's because they don't know that there is a process. And there is a guy in Islamabad who actually knows, and his numbers gets passed around to everybody. And so whenever there's a problem, everybody calls that one guy and says, hi, Mr. X, can you please help me? And then Mr. X helps, because he is the guy who knows the process. And then he calls the NADRA official, whoever you're dealing with, and helps pave the way to resolving any of the outstanding issues. But now that I've done 2, even the guy who issues birth certificates in Karachi, he's like, if anybody who walks in and says, I know Aasma Khan, he goes, here's your birth certificate. Yes.
In terms of the U.S. side, just because, and maybe how it links with the Islamic concept of a guardian here as an adopted parent, because I have friends that they adopted the baby and they went back to Canada to try and get their daughter's the citizenship.
Canada is different.
Yeah, okay. Well,
Canada does not allow adoption from Pakistan because of kafala.
Yes.
And they also don't allow adoption from Morocco because of kafala.
Yeah, so they don't consider the guardian as your actually adopted parent, so that they could consider as a child. They consider as just, yeah.
Well, the thing is, you see, the concept of adoption in the US and Canadian and other systems is that you are terminating the right of the biological parent. When you are given guardianship in a Muslim country, you are not terminating the right of the parent. You are simply taking guardianship and responsibility to raise the child. And so The United States still allows you to do that, and Canada, up until like I think 10 years ago, did allow kafala children to get adopted and become Canadian citizens. But a lot of people think that the reason why kafala was banned in Canada was an actual, it was a way to stop Muslim migration. They didn't openly say it, but they just kind of said kafala is out, and kafala is only done in Muslim countries. So Mr. Trump hasn't figured that out yet. So far kafala is in, alhamdulillah, and inshallah, I'm leaving on January 9th to go get my children's passports confirmed. And so, yeah, so I'm on I'm getting on an airplane for another adventure. So it's really, honestly, it's the best adventure of your life. I really highly, highly encourage it, because the barakah you get from it is unimaginable. And I think that's why Prophet Muhammad ﷺ encouraged it, not only just because he was an orphan who was taken in by his uncle, but because of what comes into your home when you have this child in your home. I'm telling you, it is amazing. It is, I cannot speak about it enough, because I'll probably just, my mascara will run and be unattractive, ugly cry. So, but it's just, it's really, really powerful. And it's something that is so deeply moving and so deeply spiritual and so hugely rewarding to yourself, that anybody who I hear tell me that, like, oh, I've done this great thing for these children, I think, no, these children have done a really great thing for me, because it's my life that has been filled with joy and love and laughter and light and barakah, and these children have brought amazing people into my life that I would never have had the opportunity to meet. And these children have made me see the world in a much more positive way, in spite of all the things that are going on that make us unhappy. Because it's such a powerful thing to love somebody for Allah. That's it.
Still there. Asma, that was wonderful. Like, honestly, the whole story, the whole journey, the whole experience, it's beautiful. And for me personally, it is very eye-opener. So, like, I've always heard about adoption, especially in Islam, and in a way that you pay money and you make sure that there is an NGO that takes care of that child. But that just takes it to the next level, where, no, you're actually adopting it in your house. So it's not only about having barakah in your money. No, you're bringing it in your house, in your daily life. So that's really eye-opener, and I'm sure it's a life changer for you. So thanks again for that wonderful experience. And I hope everyone enjoyed tonight's talks, both of them. And you know what's amazing about TYG is that every night, every month, almost every month, we learn something completely new. Like, these two topics are completely new for me, and I can see some faces nodding also. So that's wonderful. And I hope to see you again in the upcoming TYG nights. If you have any questions, if you have any inputs, feedback, we're always welcome. Hopefully, our next session, even May or Alia or both of them will be here with us. I guess by this, we would like to thank you again for spending Saturday night with us here. And good luck. Hope to see you soon.